Napoleon Hill told us that whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. What an amazingly powerful statement that really is. When I first came across Napoleon Hill and I first discovered him, I didn't really understand the depth of that statement because I didn't have the knowledge then that I have today. But when I started to study him, I found that actually this was a man that had spent a very long time discovering his philosophies, discovering the philosophies of success and what would help us achieve the things that we really strive for in life. The problem is with a lot of people that there's just little things that get in the way. There's little things that stop them from really achieving the greatness that they're capable of. And with just a few small little tweaks, we can overcome them. And we can overcome them in a way that is really, really simple. It's really effective. And most importantly, is going to solve the challenge. It's going to give us the answer that we're looking for. Now, when we look at where we are in life right now and where it is that we want to go, are we really, really appreciating the things that are happening right now? Are we really appreciating the amazing things that we have around us? Or are we taking things for granted because we're constantly telling ourselves that it's just not enough? I lived in that world for quite a period of time where I told myself that it just wasn't enough. I was challenging myself constantly, but not in a positive way. And it was through learning to control my mind and learning to believe that anything was possible, and I just put my mind to it, that I really started to achieve the things that were truly what I was all about. What I needed to do fundamentally first, though, was deal with the gaps that were in my foundation. When we built houses years ago, we used to build them by digging straight onto the dirt and then putting the bricks straight on top of that dirt. We didn't really make sure that it was solid and that it was going to be able to hold up the structure that we were going to put on top of it. And so what we've discovered is that years later, remedial action is needed. Work is needed to be done to fill those gaps that have shown themselves in the foundation. And that's the same for human beings. That's what happens with us. Because our parents try their best. They do everything that they know from the knowledge that they have. The reality is that for a lot of them, there are gaps in the foundations. And we are in a new world now, a new generation. We have so much at the tips of our fingers. We have so much that we can do right now that they couldn't do. There's a wealth of information that's available to us. You've got to ask yourself the question, are you prepared to go out there and grasp it? Are you prepared to go out there and find what it is that you need that's going to take you to that next level of success? It's a really, really interesting subject to think about us as individuals and what we need to do to really, really develop us. So I go back to Napoleon Hill. I was pretty astounded when I really started to study Hill that he spent 25 years getting to the point of publish with Think and Grow Rich. How many people do you know, or even yourself, would actually be tenacious enough and would have the patience to study a subject for that long before they actually delivered the result on it? The interesting thing is, though, is that the time and the patience and the persistency and the tenacity all paid off, didn't they? Because the book was published in 1937, and yet today, in 2003, it is still a best-selling book on self-help, self-development, and getting you from where you are now to where you want to go. So it's interesting, isn't it, that Hill went through all of those years without even being paid, because he did it because somebody saw something in him that he didn't see in himself that meant he could achieve these amazing things. What does it all come back to though? Well, it comes back to what's going on in here being controlled by the external forces that are around us. And actually, our mind is a completely different thing to the brain that's in our head here. And our mind is actually in every cell of our body. It's in every mortal part of our being. And when we understand that the vibration that we are giving off is absolutely critical to that progress, and is absolutely critical to us really achieving the things that we want to achieve, then we understand on a whole new level how important our thoughts and our focus are. A lot of people say that, the law of attraction it's just woo-woo. It doesn't really matter, it doesn't really count. But the reality is today that we know that that's just absolutely not true. Every single day we are getting more and more proof that the chances are we're not the only planet in our solar system, that we're not the only living beings that are here in this thing that we call the universe. So it brings us back to our focus and our mind and how important it is to really tweak what is going on in there and get it working. Now, for most people, there isn't a huge amount of work that needs to be done. Fundamentally, it's some small little things, like I said, in the foundation that need that little tweak just to take them up to a level that means we can be exactly who we want to be. Where do we find these tools though? Well, we find them by asking ourselves a really great question about what the challenge is that we're having right at this moment. I always love the story of Viktor Frankl that Tony Robbins tells. And if you don't know it, I'm just going to spend a couple of minutes here sharing it with you. But Viktor Frankl was a prisoner of war during the Second World War. And he was in one of the concentration camps. Now, I don't know if you've ever been to a concentration camp. I have. It was one of the most sombering experiences I've ever had in my entire life. And we talk about energy. We talk about the energy that's around us and the energy that we bring to life every single day. And I had only ever experienced energy like in that concentration camp in one other place that I'd been to. And that was where Captain Cook was killed on the Hawaiian Big Island. But back to Viktor. Viktor Frankl had just got to the point where he couldn't take any more of being in that camp. And he knew that the only way that he was going to get out was by asking himself a question. So he asked himself the question of, how am I going to get out of here today? Because I can't do this anymore. I don't want to be here anymore. But what I don't know is how I'm going to get out of this place that I'm in today. And when he asked himself the question the first time, the answer, it didn't come. So he asked himself the question again. And again, and again, and again, and again, until the answer, after 8 hours, came to him. And the answer was the form of a truck that pulled up full of decaying bodies. And he knew, looking at that truck, that that was the only way that he was going to get out of this hell that he was living on a daily basis. So he stripped off his clothes and he dove into the pile of decaying bodies. Now I ask you, how many of you would go to that length, would go to those levels to really get what you know is your true purpose, to really do everything you can to be the person that you are meant to be here on this plane? Well, he did. He went for it. He did the thing that most people would never even consider because it was the only option that was available to him. So he dove into that pile of bodies and the truck drove away. And luckily, because he had no idea where it was going to go, luckily, it dumped all the bodies in an open grave. So he waited until dark and he ran 40 miles in his birthday suit to his freedom. Now, when it comes to asking ourselves a better question, do you go to those lengths? Do you go to those lengths to actually really allow what is inside of you to come out? Do you take that time to reflect and ask a better question? Or do you give up? Do you say it's too difficult, it's too hard, I just can't do this? Is that the sort of language that you're using? Because if it is, it's time for you to change that language up. It's time for you to be true to you and really start focusing and striving for what it is that you would like to have in your life. Make great choices, make great decisions, but know why you want them, why you are striving in this direction, and most importantly, what is your why here on planet Earth? Why are you here? What is your purpose? What are you here to affect? What are you here to do? Life is about living day by day. It's about being here in the present because that's exactly what it is. It's the present, it's here, it's now. It's what we are all about. It's about today. People get so hung up on tomorrow and they get so hung up on the future and they get so hung up on where it is that they're going. How about living by standards today and knowing that you are being everything you can be until you go to bed this evening? I learned that from my great friend Derek Mills, who's an amazing guy who had an epiphany moment that completely changed his life. The thing is, again, we're surrounded by messages today. We're surrounded by this person did this and this person did that, and we get hung up in their stories instead of getting hung up in our own stories. And I know for a long time that I was one of those people. I got hung up in other people's stories, in other people's worlds, and I didn't get hung up in my own. And that's what it's all about, isn't it? It's all about being hung up on you, because that is not a bad thing. You are the most valuable asset that you are ever gonna own. Yet, you abuse you. You ignore the signs that the universe is giving to you. You don't focus and commit in the way that you deep down know that you really need to. And that's why you get to the certain level and then you stop. And then you go a little bit further and then you stop. But in the middle of all that, there's going to be days where you like, just why is it not happening the way that I want it to? Well, I ask you the question, how honest are you being with yourself about that? How honest are you being with you about what you are doing every single day? Because when you don't have that honesty with you, the only person that you're kind of leading down the garden path is yourself. And that's kind of nuts, really, isn't it? It's crazy. But we've all done it. We've all been there at some point during our life. So what's going to be different in 2014 for you? What are the changes that you're going to make? What are the standards that you are going to have every single day? And how are you going to show up in your life differently to how you have so far? Well, one of the key ways that you can analyse how to do this is by taking that time to do nothing, taking that time to think and reflect on the achievements that you've made, the great things that have happened, praising you for those things. And then looking at the things that just didn't work quite so well and looking at what you need to do to tweak them. A lot of the time we think that we've got to make these huge fundamental changes, and really actually what we need to start with is some really small tweaks, because when we attempt to make the huge fundamental changes, they don't normally happen, and the reason they don't normally happen is because we've chunked them just far too big. We've created a hike up Everest when actually what we really need to do is start with going and maybe trying to climb Snowdon, because that's a far easier task to start off with. But again, because of all these influences around us, we model ourselves on other people, and we look at a small snippet of their story. We look at a small snippet of where they are right now. But what we don't delve into is what they've been through to get to this place. So don't beat yourself up. Don't criticise yourself for these things. Be true to you and empower you, understand you, and most of all, take the time to do all of these things. Expectation is a really great thing, but expectation comes with action. We can expect these amazing things to happen in our lives, but what we've got to do is make sure that we are taking the action as well. So, in 2014, what are you going to do differently? What are you going to do that is going to change your life in a way that is going to help you move closer to the person that you are truly here to be? Think about it. And remember, like Hill said, the mind is an amazing thing, and whatever you can conceive and believe, you can achieve.